Alrighty, welcome everybody. As you can see, this is going to be a quick, heartless summary of the first book of the Balar series. And this is mostly intended for my beta reader group, but I'm going to post this on YouTube for everybody to see. And I will be reading the comments, so please, if you have any questions or derogatory comments, please let me know. Yes, so this is just intended to get everybody up to speed, up to the first book. This will sort of leave out the atmosphere, the little nuances and so on. But it's just to get you an idea of what the series is about. Well, so this is about the first book, The Curse of Balor. It came about when there were bits of a Gothic horror novel I was writing that just didn't fit that book. So I sort of transplanted them into something else, intending them to just be creepy short stories, but then a shared universe came about. I am a excessive planner, so more on that later. Now, it is set in 1895, so gas lamps and carriages, and it is a fictional town located in the southern Carpathian Mountains, as you can see, with the helpful arrows. This was still in the state of Romania, or it would be a country, I guess, at this stage. It's to try and invoke the classic sort of Gothic Dracula sense of things here. So it's a bit of an impossible town in a valley being overlooked by the mountains, surrounded by forests, woods, shall I say, with creepy monsters and so on, and with every limitation of that era. Alrighty, so in the first book and the second one, there are 13 short stories. Each deals with a different group of characters and handles different areas. Now, the idea is that these little fragments build up to give you a bigger picture. The first 3 books in the series out of 6 all deal with all take the form of this sort of short story narrative, giving you little glimpses here and there. The last 3 books are novels, where I will focus on a more tightly orchestrated group of characters, and there's a plot and a conclusion, and things burn down. Alright, so here's just a brief summary of the stories in the first book. So first, we have The Sharpest Shadows. It starts with a old Van Rixie saying, which is the name of the gypsies in this area, which goes, the brighter the light, the sharper the shadows. Which we will see means quite a lot in this series. So, we begin with a group of people covering up a grave in the woods. There are 2 noblemen, Nikolai Kern, a young spare to the Kern family, Sylvanus Dunwick, who was a bit of a terrible, terrible person, and their 2 servants. They have just, unfortunately, killed a servant named Iris Rice and buried her in the woods. And the series begins, as it means to go on. Iris digs herself out. She's not quite as dead as they thought she was. She proceeds in eating Kern and one of the manservants. So she ate Arthur Mitchell, Sylvanus's manservant. And, well, Dunwick escapes and Campbell runs back to town. More on them later. What is significant here is when they bury this woman, Nikolai sends his servants off to go cover the grave with something so that animals don't dig her up. How nice of him. They disturb they gather some stones they figure would work quite well, and they disturb a strange formation of carved stones in the woods, and bring them along. This is significant. Yes, so by the end, we establish that they are cannibalistic zombie people. Welcome to Balor, people. Iris, who is now raised from the dead, sees a stranger in the woods, dressed in black, wearing a top hat, and with a strange silver pendant in the shape of a feather on his lapel. The stranger points her to Balor, and that is where we begin. The next story is The Beast of Scaffold Hill. It's some time later when a group of grave robbers, Cutter and Scratch, climb the scaffolding of this so-titled Scaffold Hill, where two people have been, convicts, shall we say, have been hung by the neck until dead, and they are going to climb up the scaffolding and rifle through their pockets. These two hanging bodies are, of course, Terence Campbell, who ran back to town with the news of a monster, and Edgar Rice, the brother of Iris. Swift justice in Balar. As they go through the pockets, Cutter finds a strange blue trinket, like a piece of glass with something in it from a little piece of string. And the moment he takes this from the pocket, he starts seeing some strange things, particularly a rather nasty cat. The idea of the story is to give a more clear introduction to Balor itself. The town is described, some of its layout, the castle on its hill, and so on. It's also here to give you a sense that they are going to be quite dark themes in here, trauma, history, because the more this seemingly supernatural cat starts haunting Cutter, the more he remembers the dark past he left behind. What else is significant here is that he tries to, when he tries to sell the trinket, the merchant is not interested, and he lifts a golden pocket watch from this merchant. Yes. In the end, unfortunately, Cutter does not make it. The cat, or the Beast of Scaffold Hill, takes the trinket and hauls it all the way into the woods, where it gives it to a mysterious woodland figure. Next, we have Midnight, a story I rewrote many a time. So, we begin in a carriage en route to Balor. There are several important characters in this story. Most significantly is Lenora Verlander, who is not what she seems. She's got strange blue-grey eyes that sort of glow in the dark. She's armed and mysterious. We have a doctor, Dr. Morton Shaw from the British Empire. He's sent here by a patron who is going to invest in his mysterious research. We see some of it through his journals, which quite deliberately evokes the Dracula sort of letter form. There are other people in the carriage. There's a linguistics expert, seemingly hired by the same person that hired the doctor, and a priest who is there to investigate strange happenings. He's been sent by Rome to investigate strange happenings in Balar. Unfortunately, their journey does not go smoothly, as the carriage is attacked by bandits, and then by some more bandits, perhaps? and then by something far worse. So, there's an animal called, or a monster, shall we say, called a Bargeist, which is there to reveal that Lenora Verlander is in fact some kind of monster slayer, hunter of creatures, and her name is Midnight. This is what I hope seems at first to be my Van Helsing standing, but not all is as it seems. The priest and the linguist do not make it. They're just cannon fodder, right? Not important. Surely not important. Yes. So, Dr. Shaw, as he and Verlander are the only ones to survive this encounter, make their way back on foot towards Balor for the first time, and the doctor reveals that he's heard of a Midnight long ago, many years ago, in Paris. This Midnight also hunted a monster that stalked the City of Lights. But that can't be. That was too long ago. Yes. So another significant thing here to mention is that the priest who was sent to investigate had in his possession a intricate golden sun amulet, the symbol of the church in this world. All right. Next we have the patron. Here we continue with Dr. Shaw in the form of journal entries, where he has to go meet the person who is employing him. This mysterious figure lives in the castle overlooking the town of Balar. The castle itself, I would say this is probably the story I enjoyed writing the most. It's sort of got Castle Dracula vibes to it, with some important differences. We meet a young man who is the servant of the patron, Antoine, who seems to take care of all of the sort of domestic parts of the castle. We meet a Dr. Chantrelle, who is into alchemy and vitamins. And at last, when at first it seems that there is no such person, we meet the patron himself, a mysterious figure named Malascar, who has got an important job for our scientist. Some important things to mention here. There are significant murals throughout the castle that give the whole game away. But I don't explain those. Not yet. Yes. Yeah, I think you will have to read the story for more information there. But the idea is to establish that there is a mysterious figure in the castle, and he's working on something important by employing artists and scientists. Next, we have the Tulpa. So here we introduce Soren Moreau, a writer, seemingly from India, obviously not his real name. He's on the run from something. He is here in Balar because he received a letter. Thank you for joining me in the comments. He received a letter from his long-dead wife, who said she's waiting for him in this town. Unfortunately, the address she gave him simply does not exist. So Mr. Moreau gives us a nice perspective of an outsider in Balar. Here he meets some other important characters. We meet Madeline Wright, who owns the Serpent and Goose Inn, and her, shall we say, boyfriend, though nothing official, Darius, who is a merchant from Africa. We also meet Dorothea and her companion, Lady Sabina Petrova, who will be significant later on. And we meet the mystic of Balor, Raluca, our fortune teller in the town. She and Soren seem to share some kind of history, but I only hint at that in here. So what is important here is the concept of places that are simply missing from Balar, seemingly so. There are ghosts, there are tulpas. Now, what is a tulpa? It is a thought creation. This is a concept that will be important going forward. We also place Soren and Midnight close together, which we'll see what happens. Obviously, I know, but it's for you to discover. Anyway, we also hear the first mention of the Tailor, a strange serial killer that has been plaguing Balor for many years. This mysterious killer has been wiping people out and sewing them together into macabre displays that have been left around town throughout the years. More on him in book 2. Next we have the Cadaver Express. This is a story about a train, a mysterious train that arrives only once a year in Balar at the stroke of midnight. No one gets on, no one gets off. Well, no one you can perceive. Here I do a little fly through of the town, introducing side characters, sort of just for flavor, but sort of hiding important characters for later. Even the tailor, although you might not recognize him in the chorus of voices, gets a little introduction there. The train is said to bring a message from the beyond every year. This time, the message is kill the witch. Whatever could it mean? Yes, I at first thought this was a little bit of a throwaway story, but so far some of the people have read it, and please let me know in the comments if you agree. Find this one quite interesting. Yes. Right, next we have wax. So here I structure it like a fairy tale. We start once upon a time. This is an important little stylistic something that is actually significant later on. I enjoy doing this sort of thing. It sort of evokes the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. This is the story of two brothers, a pair of twins, the mayor's sons, no less, who they like partying, they like fighting over the same girl. In this case, thank you for liking it, thank you in the comments. In this case, the object of their sport, shall we say, is Raluca, the mystic of Balar. She is quick to catch on to their little game and sets them a series of tasks, a la any fairy tale from Grimm or beyond. Gathering flowers like a black rose or garlic flowers, until one brother prevails, but them being twins, they swap places at the last minute, and they're introduced to the cult of wax. Now, the cult of wax is a sort of secret society amongst the people of Balar, made up of some of the gypsies, some of the common folk, and some of the more upper class people in Balar. They're made all equal with masks and rituals, and so forth. And they perhaps deify or worship, depending on how you look at it, a mysterious, monstrous figure, a almost human woman who wears a elaborate stag headdress that's got candles in the antlers. She has no eyes. She's a bit scary, depending on how you look at it. Now, unfortunately, the brother who tricked his other brother into this became the victim of a ritual murder. And they lived happily ever after, of course. Okay, so what's significant here is also that the murder causes the gypsies, who always get the blame, the Van Ricks, to withdraw from town for the time being. Next we have The Last Song, one of my personal favorite stories. I maybe am not allowed to have favorites, I don't know, but I am happy with it. Here we're introduced to Old Man Randall, who was a famed composer and virtuoso pianist in his time, but has since, in his old age, developed a strange confusion. We see the story from his carer. I'm allowed to have favorites, thank you. We see the story from the point of view of his carer, Odette, who has to sort of try and keep him focused. And until, unfortunately, the old man passes away, in which a haunting ensues. So what's important here is that we again establish that there's ghosts in town. Also, there's another cameo of the stranger, the man in the top hat with the silver figure on his lapel. He might have done something to this old man to make him so confused. For those careful readers, some of the things that Mr. Randall says is not pure confusion. If you carefully read, you'll see that some of the things reoccur throughout the story. There is a brief mention of another blue trinket. And we have another theme here of maybe redemption. But we'll get back to that. Another significant thing is he could write, Old Man Randall in his time, he could compose piano pieces that could speak to people on a fundamental level, like he could read what was written on their hearts. Next we have Hex. Here we are diving deeper into the Vanricks, the gypsy people of the Balar Valley, and we sort of contrast them with the upper classes of Balar town itself. So we, on the one side we have the Vanricks, on the other side we have the Kerns. They're mourning the loss of this boy in the wax story. They're mourning the loss of Nikolai in the first story, Sharpest Shadows. What's significant here is I mention a whole bunch of characters that will be reoccurring. So we have Grigor, who is the champion of the Vanricks, and like a warrior guardian of these nomadic, or they're not quite nomadic, they sort of move around the valley in the woods. He and Raluca the Mystic had a thing. We also see a monster being summoned by the Vanricks, an entity known as Lucrinos, the spirit of vengeance. There's also Gita the washerwoman, who seems to be popping up here and there. She's also at the meeting of the Cult of Wax. She's not quite what she seems. Also, what might seem like a sort of throwaway character, there's a little boy amongst the gypsies with one eye missing. And there's also mentions of the Hex, a creature that lives in the woods that was once, much like Gregor, a guardian of the Vanricks. So what I'm trying to do in this one is to sort of set up that there is an inherent conflict between the religion of this world and the old ways. All right. Next we have the portrait. Another one I'm quite happy with. Here we introduce Lord Balthazar Kern, one of the three major the Kerns are one of the three major families in Balar, along with the Dunwicks and the Luthons. Now, Lord Kern has been turning away artists and sculptors left and right. He wants his portrait painted, or at least his likeness sculpted as well, before his significant milestone birthday. But no matter the skill of the artist, he's never quite happy with it. Nobody else seems to know why. They think it's purely vanity, but as every time he looks at the resultant artwork, he sees only a skull peering back at him from the darkness of the canvas. Hence the cover. We also see this through the perspective of some of the servants. I prefer that to rather than just focusing on the nobility all the time. If you've read some of my other work, I suppose that is a little bit of a theme for me. Also, something to remember is the frame narrative is Iris, who's becoming less zombie and more vampire as the story progresses. This Lord Kern's house was the household she worked at before this terrible fate befell her. She's sort of trying to remember as she's going through. Now, in the story, the last painter of Balar is a man named Edwin Luna, who has some strange things in his little apartment. The old artwork seemed to... the artwork in his studio seemed to come to life at night, including a woman that constantly screams. He is persuaded to take on this contract of painting Lord Kern. He does so and does not reveal the artwork to this old man because they decided let him paint. Oh, thank you. One of the people in the comments says the portrait is one of my favorite parts of Curse. Thank you. I really enjoyed writing it. I'm glad you enjoyed it, reading it. In the end, that's what I want is enjoyment. But yes, so Luna is contracted to paint Lord Kern. Lord Kern does not see the painting until it is revealed. Unfortunately, the combination of Luna's brushwork and Lord Kern's strange problem results in something terrible, walking out of the painting and claiming Lord Kern's life. Next we have eyes. So you'll see in each of these books there is a body part mentioned. In this one it's eyes, and the next one it's ears. And it's my little way of letting you know when we are talking about our doppelgangers. One of the bad guys operating in Balar is a group of doppelgangers who steal faces. But we'll get back to that in a second. In this story, we talk about the cobbler and his wife. Every week, they are visited by Lord Dunwich, the same Lord Dunwich that was in the first story, who calls on them to have his wicked way with the wife, to repay an old debt. This is an uncomfortable theme, but it's something that is going to come up a lot in this series. Anyway, as it progresses, the cobbler decides he's had enough, and he decides to take out Lord Dunwich. Unfortunately, on the day when this happened, Lord Dunwich does not act like himself. He seems polite and friendly. He's just there out of habit. But the cobbler goes through with it, and he kills Lord Dunwich. They bury him under the floorboards, as you do, and they believe that they are free of this terrible, terrible curse. Unfortunately, the next day his wife goes to the market and sees Lord Dunwich walk proudly around Balar. No problem in the world, although he is missing an eye. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. They go back to their house and pick up the floorboards, and the thing beneath it is not quite human. Next we have Invalid or Invalid, depending on how you read it. Hopefully both ways. This is actually the very first story I wrote before Balor was Balor. It's again a journal form, and this little girl being sick and writing about it was the first thing that came to me, and everything else sort of followed out of this. So this is Primrose and her father. Primrose is very ill. She's confined to the bedroom of an inn. She's got a terrible fever, She's terribly hungry and thirsty all of the time, and her father goes out quite a lot. It progresses. Also, she has what she refers to as her guardian that sits unseen on the windowsill every night. So, as it progresses, it becomes clear that her illness is just a kind of fever, perhaps, but the real trouble is her father. Her father has turned into some kind of monster. Every night he kills people. We see just before this monster kills his daughter, Midnight swoops in to kill him, and she rescues the girl. So this also establishes other things here, that Midnight is an indiscriminate monster killer. Doesn't matter whose father it is. We establish that there is a fever going around Balar, and this is of concern to Midnight. Next we have the governess. This is the final story in the first book. Here we introduce a very important property and an important family. We're talking about the saints. So here again, there's a voice I quite like. So the eldest girl of the saint family writes letters to her deceased mother. She's quite strange, she likes bugs, and she's quite intelligent, much like her late mother. We are introduced to them as they have hired a new governess, Imogen Brooke from overseas. She's here to look after the children as Mr. Saint is sent to business elsewhere outside of Balor. Poor Mrs. Brooke discovers that the Saint house is quite haunted. Every night there is scratchings and knocking at the door. There is a strange figure that sits in a rocking chair in the attic. Anyway, Midnight and Soren bring Primrose, the girl from the previous story, to live with the governess for now, because she's got nobody else to look after her. Also, the saint girl discovers Iris in the garden and decides to feed her bugs, because that's the kind of little girl she is. There are many secrets hidden in the story. I'm just trying to think, what can I spoil, what can I not spoil? Let's not spoil anything. But in the end of the at the end of the story, Iris recognizes that the fever that Primrose has is the same fever she had before she got killed in the forest. It's got something to do with the plague of vampirism that is haunting Balor. But before she can interrogate this, a voice tells her, calls her into the woods. She travels out of Balor, up the slopes of the Carpathian Mountains, towards a red door set into the rock face, where there are two other women and the man with the top hat waiting for her. Ooh. And then finally, we end with a poem. The Whisper Man. Now, the Whisper Man is said to prey on those with guilty consciences and takes them away. This is a boatload of foreshadowing, shall we say. And it's the only poem I will subject you to. So yes, just go through it. But anyway, that is the first book. This is me experimenting. It is me trying to find the way. And I think there's a lot to enjoy in that, and there's a lot of creepiness. But I do realize that there are quite a lot of characters. My advice is to just go with it. Not all of them will be important. Sort of take them on a story-by-story basis. If they come back, I reintroduce them. So next we have Book 2. So I'm not going to go into a full summary of Book 2. As you can see, we're going alphabetical. We've gone from Curse to Doom. This is my personal favorite. Here I knew what I was doing. Everything felt right. I don't know if it comes across that way. The few people that have finished it do like it. Oh, thank you for inserting claps in the chat. Thank you. So as you can see, there's a book 2. I knew what I was doing. By this stage, I had worked out the ending. I worked out the structure of everything. I knew where everything was going. I knew what was behind everything. I would say 80% of things, when I finished this book, I knew 80% of what's going to happen in the rest of the series. We start with a murder mystery, something I adore as a reader. Something I really enjoyed to write. It was quite difficult, but I think I got it. I don't solve the murder mystery in this first book. However, I do give you quite a lot of clues for you to solve it by yourself. So just as a quick intro, please let me know, by the way, in the comments on YouTube or wherever you watch it, if you'd like me to do a similar summary for book 2. I don't spoil too much, I think. I don't know if you agree. But just let me know. Anyway, so the first story here is The Tailor. And here we introduce a different frame. So in the first book, the frame was Iris, as she was coming to terms with her transformation. In sort of reviewing it later, I felt maybe she didn't know enough of the town to give you the structure. However, Inspector Skender, I think, is a much stronger anchor. So he links all the little stories together as he investigates this crime. So we introduce Thomas Skender, as I said, his sergeant, and some of the other police officers. We introduce the Undertaker Quinnell, who acts as a kind of mortician / pathologist, even though that sort of thing is looked down upon in this town. They're quite religious. Tallow, who's an old friend of Skender's. I introduce you to Madame Morar, who runs the Marigold House, the house of ill repute in Balor, shall we say. They discover the tailor, the serial killer I mentioned before's 8th creation. They try and identify each body, and they all share some links, shall we say. And in his process of investigating this, trying to identify who it is, what each body part is, I give you 13 more short stories. I particularly like, even though I like all of them, and like I said, I think book 2 is stronger, I particularly liked the theatre short story, Monsieur Gramel Presents, in which the amateur players of Balor try and put on a production. Again, I maybe might give a better rundown of this if I do a summary of this book too, but I did quite enjoy that one. And in that one I make fun of myself. Anyway, so at the end of October, in time for Halloween, we have book 3, The Evil of Balor. This one, it was difficult to write. I knew every step of where I was going, but sort of bringing each step to fruition was quite tricky. I think I managed it in the end. So in book 3, some concerned citizens arrest who they believe is responsible for all the evils that have happened in Balor. They're not content to wait for the constabulary, for the police or anybody or the mayor to do anything. They're going to take the law into their own hands. They lock this person up into a room and wait until morning until they can hand him over to the authorities. I explain why in the book. But in the process, this captured stranger tells stories to basically save his own life, to prove his own innocence, perhaps. So it's like a Scheherazade 1001 Nights type structure. The idea of these stories, there's slightly more. I think we're going to end up with 15 stories in this one instead of 13. Um, I'm going to give you some more on the murder mystery, but then the rest of it is going to be this character who knows quite a lot about Balor to give you stories that will change your perspective of what you saw before. So when previous stories felt slightly unfinished, maybe, these will be the missing links. I am going to read one of the stories when we get closer to publication time. So yeah, I'm going to do it sort of in this sense as well. But that is all I got for you at the moment. So I'm going to, this is live on Twitch, so it's unedited with all my stumbles and rambling. I'm going to put it on YouTube so you can watch it later whenever you get a chance, and the general public. If you stumble on this by mistake, you clicked the wrong link, but thank you for staying this long. The link for any of these books are in the description. So thank you. Oh, thank you for being excited for book 3. Thank you. And goodbye.